teachers of Reddit. How obvious is it when one student has a crush on a classmate? I once intercepted a note from a boy to a girl that, roughly translated from French, said, "I get hard for you. Do I make you moist? I've done it before. Wanna do it?" This was 8th grade English. Our Casanova wasn't the brightest bulb in the packet, but he had advanced visceral competencies. In middle school they just start trying to get on each other's nerves more, and are usually overly smiley. The main problem comes when only one of them is smiley. It's 100% super obvious all the time, but I teach emotionally damaged teenagers. Depends on the age, but the signs are obvious as hell. Lots of staring, and not so obvious but very obvious attempts at being near them. Visible disappointment when they aren't put in the same group for group work. Jealousy in all forms. I've seen a kid hate a classmate for weeks because that classmate sat next to the kid's crush for morning meeting. Super obvious. When a girl says "stoo-oopa" while laughing at a guy who is teasing her, or a guy goes out of his way to make fun of her / steal something from her, so she'll have to pursue him to get it back. It makes me 100% certain. Shout out to my high school econ teacher for noticing that me and a girl were into each other, constantly putting us in the same group, straight up asking the girl if she had a boyfriend while I was in the rumors. Anderson is the best wingman of all time. There's a boy in my class whose voice hasn't changed yet, but every time he is talking to another girl from a different class he is noticeably lowering his voice to sound deeper. Obvious signs are obvious. They start sitting next to each other. Not a teacher, but I had an amazing teacher. She knew I had a crush on this girl, and she might have known she had a crush on me. All high school assigned seating we were put next to each other. All projects we did together. She put us together for everything. I'm marrying that girl in 4-5 weeks. Thanks, Mrs. Perez. What's even more obvious is when one has a crush and the other isn't interested in speaking, strictly from the demographic from my own school I taught at. So I hope it's clear I'm not generalizing all teenagers here, but I've noticed when a girl is crushing and the guy isn't, he is more likely, but not always, to be more forward about telling her so, to the point in 1 or 2 cases of sometimes being openly cruel to her. The girls in the reverse situation act annoyed and will sometimes make their disinterest clear, but more often than not they grin and bear it and try to pretend the crush doesn't exist. That's all I've got. I was there 4 months. Former middle school teacher here. I actually told kids one year that if they wanted me to change their seating chart they could email me. This was to avoid potential conflicts or bullying. Instead, a girl asked me to put her next to the boy she liked. I did. I wanted to reward her for asking for what she wanted. I think my exact words were, "Get it, girl." Unfortunately for her, he wasn't interested. I remember one time during an 8th grade field day hearing a bit of an altercation between a few kids. When I went over there I saw that this one very nerdy kid was chasing another boy around the football field, while a few other boys laughed, and a girl was telling them to stop. Turns out what happened was that one of those boys was teasing the girl like that kind of stupid teasing 8th grade boys do to girls they like, and that the nerdy kid, who also seemed to have a crush on this girl, stood up to the boy to defend her honor and wanted to fight him. So instead of fighting, the boy ran in circles while the nerdy kid chased him, furious and red in the face. It was very cringy. I got the vibe that the girl didn't mind the teasing from that boy and that the nerdy kid's crush was probably not reciprocated. I broke up the fight, partly because I wanted to save the nerdy kid from his 8th grade self. I think most of us have been in a situation as a teenager where we try to impress someone who doesn't feel the same way. I didn't want him to look back years later and be even more embarrassed by it had it gone on longer. They started hanging around each other a lot, always hugging, making lots of context for physical contact. Then they started holding hands, became very close to the point that you'd never see one without the other, until they finally started dating. They were 2 of the most troublesome children, and to this day everyone is afraid of this relationship. I tried to ask this question, but instead of classmate, I wrote teacher. I was told the wife I was spotty in jail, which explains my lack of responses. Used to teach 6th and 8th grade science at an inner city school. I told all of my students their best chance at dating their crush was to be respectful. The 8th graders ignored me and proceeded to make fun of their crushes. The 6th graders though, they bought it. 11-year-olds were holding the door open and pulling chairs out for their crushes, being supportive and kind to one another. Cutest shoot ever. Edit. One letter. In the words of my teacher, who I recently saw during break in college now, when she decided to sit in your lap every day and started playing house with you instead of working, I kind of got the hint. How in God's name did you miss it? Apparently, the fact that this girl was so obvious, while I didn't see it, triggered her. She even ranted about it for a couple of minutes in one of her other classes before she realized that that was inappropriate. In my defense, the girl was actively trying to send mixed signals. Not a teacher, but my Spanish teacher somehow noticed my crush. I didn't have Spanish class with my crush. Also, my history teacher always placed me by my crush not creepy, and I started to guess that one teacher noticed, spread it to other teachers. A few years after I graduated HS, I ran into my geometry teacher. She vividly remembered me because I got a low C, but selected to retake her class because I really didn't learn geometry. Not her fault. Midway through the semester she actually saw the look on my face when I got it. We did a quick catch up and she asked me if Michelle and I ever got together. I looked at her puzzled and said no. Why would you think we would? She laughed at me and explained that it was brutally obvious to her, day one, that she liked me. Proceed to fill me in on everything she did that indicated she was into me. That whooshed right over my head as a stupid 10th grader. She said she saw her the first day of class walk in, stop for a second, and walk directly over to the desk next to mine and sit down. At that point, you have chosen your desk for the semester. This class was the only time I would see her at school, maybe in the halls every now and she would always ask me how I or the team did soccer / swimming / track / lacrosse / baseball, and be sure to congratulate me when my name got announced for winning / scoring. Even mentioned she went to the game and saw me play. She gave me a nickname that she used all the time she saw when I would struggle and try to help me. My teacher loved this. She thought it was so cute. Made sure to walk out of the classroom next to me every time she'd compliment me, sometimes on clothes. To be fair, it was common knowledge she had a boyfriend at another school, so I didn't even think that this was anything more than her being friendly. I was also a dweeb that happened to be very athletically inclined. The folks I hung out with were not the popular crowd where she was. I didn't even hang out with my teammates, the jocks, but easily fit in with them and could approach the group. In my mind, there were not enough mathematicians on earth to calculate how far out of her league I was. When they're in kindergarten, they go from ignoring the other person to holding hands at recess and getting mad when they don't get out in the same play center together. Up until high school, and even then sometimes, it takes the form of harassing or picking on the person they are attracted to. It's more socially acceptable at that stage to mess with them than just express attraction. It's funny to watch TBH. Well, not now, but when I was in high school, a student and a substitute teacher had a relationship. It started off as him giving compliments every day, then after some time later they were kissing, and he would grab her ass in front of other students. Don't know how she wasn't fired or how they were never caught. Not a teacher, but as a student, I enrolled in a home economics as a senior to get the easy credits. I soon regretted not signing up for graphic design class because the class consisted of teen moms and their soon-to-be fathers, with only 17Y/O virgin me in the middle of the class. So yay. That is another clear sign that classmates had a crush on each other at one point. Shoot, I need to know how obvious this is in an office setting with adults. Asking for a friend. They tell me in hopes to derail the class. But my love for molecules is greater than my love for teenage gossip. Not a teacher, but I was completely oblivious as a kid. In 7th and 8th grade, had a crush on a girl in class, and it wasn't until years later that I figured out she had been flirting with me, sitting on the desk in front of me, coming to me after class in the hallway to tell me she thought I was the smartest kid in class. I wasn't. And that was my response, followed by walking faster to get away from her. I remember there being other clear signs, but I have tried to put it behind me. We have mutual Facebook friends, so she popped up in my suggested friends at some point. She's still really ridiculously good looking. Clearly every teacher is going to say that it's obvious, because if someone hides their crush well, then they'll never know about it. When your high school chemistry class has N desks and N+1 students, so someone at random has to sit on a lab bench for the lecture, but somehow you end up with N1 desks filled with students, one empty desk, and 2 students sitting together on a single lab bench. Not a teacher, but working in a care home. One of our girls has a crush on one of the boys and it's so obvious. She started taking more care of her appearance. She laughs too loudly and obviously at stuff he says, some of it not even remotely funny. Wherever he is she's not far, etc. He has no idea and I keep debating whether to tell him out or not. The obvious ones would be obvious, but many more silent crushes will go completely unnoticed. So the tempting answer would be it's obvious, but the truth is that it's less obvious than it seems. I'll tell you right now that when I had crushes in school, it was top priority that no one ever find out, especially the object of the crush. I'd say pretty obvious. I remember one day my college professor was talking to me after class and asked me what was going on. He then asked if I was in love with anyone. And even my friend said everyone within 4 rows knows you like her, which was probably true, since most people thought I was dating her. I'm not a subtle person and I know I'm obvious. My math teacher once told my sister that I was in love with the boy who sat next to me. I mean, it was true, but why'd she have to share? My English teacher thought me and my best friend were in a relationship all through senior year, which we thought was funny when she told us, but then he ended up kissing me after graduation and we dated for a little after that. I guess she knew better than we did at the time. If the 2 kids are in your class in the same hour/class period, it does become pretty obvious. They get all nervous around each other. But if I'm being honest, teachers aren't really interested or concerned about that. They've got a job to do. When I taught HS, I never knew or cared about the gossip unless it turned into a physical fight right outside my classroom, which was the farthest away from the security desk in the school, so it was a popular site for fights. I'm convinced one of my old professors could tell I was into another classmate just by the professor's reaction as I was saying it'd see my interest the next semester. In elementary it's very obvious, and in the lower grades they can be very sweet about it, giving little gifts, drawings, etc. In the upper grades it's basically insults and cooties, but still obvious. I work with special needs in a high school. It's extra obvious for us, because a lot of them are experiencing these emotions for the first time and don't really have the social filter to feel awkward about showing it. On one hand, it's like sweet and cute. On the other hand, they can be a bit explicit, and we have to step in frequently to tell them to rein it back. Not a teacher, but my Spanish teacher in high school said she could match people pretty easily. We sat in pairs, and at the time I heard her 5 years ago she had managed to pair 3 or 4 couples that actually got married down the road. Not a teacher, but in 10th grade science class I was ostracized by my classmates, so I moved seats and began sitting behind my crush. It led to an invite, original name on invite, crossed off to her birthday party. Not a teacher, but in 10th grade I was after school working on a chemistry project when my teacher told me she was moving my seat next to Josh. I asked why, and she said I was the only girl in the class he ever talked to, and I always smiled big when he did. So apparently it was obvious. I'm a university professor and it's usually quite obvious. On more than one occasion I have entered a classroom and there are foot and back massages going on between students when I come into a class early during a break, not during a class. I agree with Judo 16, it depends on the age. The average age of my students is 18 to 25. On several occasions, I would be talking with a female student about her progress in my class and the male who liked her would be on guard and ready to speak up for her. At least once per semester, I have to give the famous, "the dumbest thing a man can do is speak for a woman who can clearly speak for herself" speech. I'm your teacher, not Mr. Steal Your Girl, so sit your ass down before I give her the confidence boost she needs to leave you. When I went to a summer camp in 6th grade, I made a mud ball and hit my crush in the face near the river we were exploring. It hit her so hard she fell into the water. We never became anything if you're wondering. Can't imagine why. Freshman year of HS I had a crush so obvious that my teacher moved seats so that we were sat next to each other, and then he dramatically increased the number of work with the person next to you activities. We just thought we got lucky at first, but he kinda confirmed it was on purpose later. Lol. It worked. We dated for nearly 5 years, only breaking up because we left for far apart colleges. 9th graders are obvious as hell. Boys just make asses of themselves and then look at their crush hoping they're laughing, usually they're not, because 9th grade girls are about 10x as mature as most 9th grade boys. Girls will laugh at all the jokes of the boy if they're interested, and sometimes do that thing where they pretend to hate the boy and think he is so annoying while giggling. This year for my freshman class I did an icebreaker survey. One of the questions was, what person from history would you want as an imaginary friend? This boy wrote this girl's name. When I asked him why, he said, because she seemed like a real cool person. So I said that they had just met, so why would he want that? To which he replied something very similar to the first answer. At this point I'm confused, so I asked him again why out of all the people that have ever existed he is choosing someone he just met. It's at this point he realizes what has just happened and turns super red and asks to go to the bathroom. Not a teacher, but I took a foreign language course last year, and I had a thing for this girl who used to sit in the front row while I sat in the last. I rarely made eye contact with her, never stared at her, never talked to her, just didn't know anything about her. As always, I was a pain in the ass, so I was always getting attention of everyone in the class, including the instructor. That being said, one day I was disturbing the class as usual, so the instructor asked me to sit beside the very same girl I had a thing for. How did the instructor know? One time when I was little, I had a huge crush on a boy. At a parent-teacher conference, my teacher told my parents I had a crush on him, and it embarrassed me a lot. I didn't even tell anybody, but it was pretty obvious. Student here, but one time my 8th grade my teacher overheard me talking about a girl I liked, Jessica, in the class, and I had to stay after school because I was the class clown for lack of better words. She asked me why I liked her. She was a cool girl, and I said something like, she's really pretty, but also nice and sweet, but I'm not popular enough to be in their group. They'll just think I'm weird. The next day the teacher came up with a class project where we had to work in pairs and she grouped me with her. After working with her for a few days we became friends and I realized she was kind of a douche. Lol. Beneath the sweet and kind facade was like a total a-hole. Learned a lesson in looking for more than popularity or good looks. Bless my 8th grade teacher's heart.